Good morning, and welcome to 2025. It is our first coffee chat in the new year. This is so exciting. So I already have my cup of coffee. I hope you have yours. But I thought today we could, in a little bit, you could come along for like a reflection with me. I realized that this month, 5 years ago, I began my clinical experience, my internship for my master's program at In Focus Counseling. And so I thought it would be kind of fun for our coffee chat today to talk about 5 things, one thing for each year that I've been in private practice and clinical experience. 5 things that I have learned about my clinical approach, or from the client perspective, or what I've learned while working with clients. So I thought that we could chat about those things today for our first coffee chat, and also a little celebration that I've been in private practice, the field for 5 years. I know a year and a half of that was for my program, but I think it's still important to celebrate. So I already have my cup of coffee. Go grab yours and let's chat. All right. I wrote it down for myself. So, okay. So, yes. Before I jump into the 5 things that I've learned, so I began my internship at In Focus Counseling underneath the supervision of Lori Johnson back in 5 years. So 2020, January 2020. Wow, that math was way too difficult, and it shouldn't have been, but January 2020. And Lori took me under her wing, and I had the bare basics, education, psychoeducation about obsessive compulsive disorder. But I had a pretty extensive behavior background, working with autism spectrum disorder, using applied behavioral analysis. And so when I started doing a little digging into exposure response prevention and OCD, I felt like it would just fit super well together with what I've already experienced through jobs and through education and things along those lines. And so I was super grateful that Lori took me on as her intern. And yeah, and I've worked with hundreds of clients over the last 5 years, and I have loved every minute of it. I feel like this is definitely my niche, and I'm very passionate about working and helping those that struggle with obsessive compulsive disorder. So it's been a lot of fun, but I've also learned a lot about myself, my approach, client perspective over the last 5 years. And I know that I'm only going to learn more and more as the years go on, and I'm super excited about that. But the 5 things that I'm going to share with you today are the ones that popped out into my head the most. So I'm a firm believer that you're learning and you should make room for reflection every day or every week. There's so much to learn from, but let's dive in. The first one that kind of was more of not something that I learned, but was, we'll say, reinforced through working with clients, and that's the struggle between knowing an action it is so real, and it's not just always about motivation. You need to have the motivation. If you're motivated enough, or you want it enough, if you're determined enough, like, you'll do it. That's not true. That's not always true. And so, like, what I mean by the struggle of knowing and action, so I hear it from a lot of clients, like, I know I should be doing this, or I'll say to clients, like, you should, I want us to try this, whatever it may be, fill in the blank. And a lot of the times, like, clients can say, like, well, yeah, I know I should be doing that, but I just can't. I can't get myself to do it. I don't know why, or I do know why. So the struggle between knowing what we should be doing and actually doing it sometimes is really big, and it's hard. And, like, how do we tackle to start, like, working our way towards that action? And yeah, I know earlier I said that, like, it's not always about motivation, and I still stand by that. It's not only being motivated to do it. Sometimes it's a mix of motivation and also finding the right approach, or the right, like, stepping stone. So the struggle between knowing and action is definitely a real thing. So that's the first one. Things that I've learned, number 2. This one's more for myself. Don't get too big for your britches. Stay humble. So I think about this in the sense that, like, I want to always have the perspective of walking through my field with my eyes open. I want to be able to continuously absorb and learn, and also not just learn new things, but learn how to do old things differently. Like a new tweak or adjustment, a different way of utilizing it, things along those lines. Like, I want to have my eyes open to that, from a learning perspective. But I would also say, from, like, a compassionate standpoint, I would say that, like, just, like, making room for the fact that, like, I'm not the bestest OCD therapist in the entire world, and that I can do more. I don't have all the answers, and also that's, like, okay. That's why we have colleagues, and we consult, and that's also why we have annual conferences, and where we can go and we can continuously learn from each other. Like that's part of, like, my whole experience being a therapist. So don't get too big for my britches, and to stay humble, and to keep learning, and not to shut myself or my clinical brain off from different perspectives, and keep learning. There's so many books and talks, and there's even more books and talks and presentations and webinars and conferences coming out every single day, week, month, year. Like, it's there, it's always there. So keep my eyes open. So all right, number 3, when we stumble or fail, we don't go back to square one. So this is a big one that I talk about with a lot of clients, not just with OCD, but like addiction. I talk about it a lot because there comes a moment in everybody's life. It's so normal. Sprinkle of normalcy here. It's so normal to fail. It is going to happen, and that's okay. But I hear from a lot of clients that I feel like I talk so much in these videos and I don't actually drink any coffee. Anyways, I hear from a lot of clients, like, when they fail, when they stumble, that I'm back to square one. And I over the years of repeatedly hearing that from clients, honestly, it wasn't even the years. I kind of like learned this pretty early on because I didn't love, obviously, hearing my clients after all of the hard work that they have done, watching them struggle and claw their way out of a lot of their symptoms, to then have a stumble and then look at me and say, Jenny, like, I feel like I'm back to square one. Like, we got to start over. And it honestly broke my heart, because of course, as your therapist, like, I'm rooting for you. I want you to succeed. I want you to reach your goals. And so like, it really broke my heart that like clients felt like when they would stumble, they were starting over, right? And so like quickly I wanted to adapt a practice of self-compassion for the client, making room for how they feel, but also the self-compassion that like, well, it's not back to square one. That's not where we're at right now, because we've just done months of learning skills, psychoeducation, like processing. Like, you can't go back to square one, because all of like everything else that we've done in treatment has easily pushed you squares ahead, if we're talking about like the square, like square one. So we can't go back to square one just because of like everything that you've done, everything that you've learned and you've practiced. Like, we can't be at square one. It's just not possible. And I know that it feels like we're back at square one because it's more of like, I failed, I have to start over. But yeah, we do have to start again. And that's usually the terminology that I say. I don't say we're starting over. I say that, yeah, we're starting again. Like, here's a new start. And what are we going to do differently this time? What do we need to, to be successful? And so like, I wanted to quickly adapt that for my clients, because it's really difficult to feel that like when we stumble, when we fail, because we're human, we are going to make mistakes. We're going to compulse, we might have a lapse or a relapse. Like, there's the possibility that could happen. And I would say it's natural to feel like I'm starting at square one, but I like to remind my clients that we're not starting at square one, and that's good, and that's okay, and let's keep moving forward. So all right, number 4. There is a fine, really difficult, easier said than done here, okay? Forewarning. There's a fine and difficult balance between meeting ourselves where we're at and also continuing to challenge. So I think it's really important, because a lot of clients come into therapy, of course, very motivated, envisioning what they want the end goal to look like. And they really focus on that, and a lot of the times they'll push sometimes too hard, too fast, things along those lines. And so what I mean by meeting ourselves where we're at is more of like, okay, what am I feeling? How do I also feel about this challenge that I'm being proposed? Do I feel like it's too big? Do I feel like it's too small? What do I feel? And then I would say that like a lot of the times, and this is why I say there's a balance between meeting ourselves where we're at and also challenging, because I don't want clients to get stuck in just, well, this is where I'm at and I don't feel like I'm moving forward. And so like, it's that really fine balance between, I feel like I can have this cup of coffee, but I really don't want to go for a walk, right? Like, just as an example. I'm sitting here, I'm having a cup of coffee, I'm relaxed, but maybe I'm feeling nervous, or maybe I have a physical symptom in the sense that like my hip hurts, and I don't want to go for a walk, right? But like increasing my walking and my movement is a goal of mine. Well, I don't want to go for a walk, but can I meet myself where I'm at, that like I don't want to go for a walk around the block? Okay, I can meet that, but I also want to challenge. Okay, can I take an extra lap around? Can I do a lap around my table? Can I, walk to the front door and come back? Or can I do that 3 times, right? Like that is the balance between meeting ourselves where we're at. I don't want to go for a walk, or I don't want to go for a run, or I don't want to exercise, right? Or I don't want to move. And then challenging, can I walk around the table? Can I, walk to the tree in my backyard and come back, right? So it's like that really fine, delicate, difficult balance between the two. And sometimes it requires some self-compassion, and I would say that like it's hard, and it takes some time to get used to sort of that balance, because like I said, a lot of the times we're just like so gung-ho of, well, I should be running. Just put on your shoes and get outside. And that's not always the way to build our success. So, okay, last one, number 5. And I would say like this was like a big one for me. And I would honestly also say that this one still to this day feels a little odd to me, but I'm continuously to embrace it, and that brings joy to me. So, number 5, there is room in the session for my personality. I don't have to be a blank slate. In graduate school, we are commonly told as therapists that we're supposed to be a blank slate. That we need to be as neutral as possible for our clients, because there's not room for our personality, or our, even like our preferences in the room, like the therapy room, things along those lines. Like a lot of the times, like clinicians won't put any like personal items and things along those lines. So, like in the therapy space, because we're supposed to be a quote unquote blank slate. And as I was honestly even a little nervous when I started to like, let a little bit more of my personality shine through with clients, because I actually, and completely honestly, I felt like it was wrong. After everything that I learned in school, of like we're supposed to be a blank slate, and there's no room for you and like the client. So like you need to be blank so that there's plenty of room for the client. Like when I started letting my personality shine through a little bit more in my sessions with my clients, like I felt like it was wrong. But I also like recognize like with my clients that they needed a person. They don't need a blank slate. And I'm also like I want to give the disclosure that like I'm not taking the therapy space from my client, but like I'm also not just I'm leaning in, I'm engaging, I'm reflecting the excitement or the sadness that they're feeling when it's appropriate, because those are genuine human emotions. My clients didn't need a blank slate. They needed a lot of the times a human, and so it's still a piece that I'm continuously like working through, but it's something that I learned that like there's space for my personality, and I know that like my personality or my approach or things along those lines aren't for every client, and that's okay. I know that I'm not the therapist for every client, but I know that I am the therapist for some clients out there, and I feel like I can be more authentic as a professional, as my professional self, by allowing myself to be myself a little bit more. So those are the 5 things that I've learned in the 5 years that I have been in private practice and clinical experience. And I can't wait to see what the next 5 years teach me and lead me towards, because I know it's just continuously growing. So thank you so much for joining me on this like reflective moment of my 5 years. I'm so like grateful that you joined me to for this reflection. I hope you have a great, and depending on where you are, safe or warm January, and I will see you next month for our next coffee chat. Have a good one.